Welcome to the Plant Spirit Podcast on connecting with plant consciousness and the healing wisdom of nature. I'm your host, Sara Artemisia, and I am deeply honored to introduce our next guest to the show today. Tavia Benjamin, they, she, he, is a healer and facilitator, and they focus on embodying liberation and creating liberated spaces for people, especially BIPOC communities. Tavia has over a decade of land and food justice organizing experience, and their work supports queer Southern Black folks to birth new social models and structures into existence that both support their freedom and help them reconnect to their divinity and sovereignty to create sustainable, holistic systems change. So Tavia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. It's lovely to be here. I always accept invitations from Sara. Like, whenever you send me something, I'm like, I'm there. Let's talk.
Thanks so much. I feel the same way. Yeah, just so amazing. And I so deeply love and respect you and your work in the world. And one of the big things that was coming up for me as I was tuning into this conversation before we got on together was around deep nourishment and the wisdom that you carry around deep nourishment. And so I'd love to just start there with everything that's really going on in the world right now. How is it possible? How can we connect with a sense of deep nourishment?
That's the question right there. Yeah, for me, like the just core reason of why it's essential to connect to deep nourishment is because we're in a moment of just really deep transition worldwide and really trying to anchor in a new way of being. And this is also partly why I've had a big career shift growing up. I used to really be heavy in the nonprofit industry. And a lot of my work still supports nonprofit stuff. But it was really hard for me to understand, like, how can we create this new change in the world if the way in which we're engaging still is so much of the world or the darkness, or just like I'm still seeing the same patterns of corruption, or just it's messy. It's humans trying to shift out of lower scripts and lower energy. It can be a little messy. So it was just really being like, okay, I can't create change if I don't learn how to embody something different. And also I was just looking at how much in my 20s, I was just like grinding and pushing and achieving and had such different goals that were not based in my authentic desires and it wasn't heart-centered. It was based around my expectations or just what I thought I should mold myself to fit what people expected of me. Yeah, it was like a really big epiphany to really think through, like, okay, if I want to bring a different energy to this world, I'm actually also believe that, I'm a being that's anchoring a different light code, that's anchoring something new, that I have to treat myself like that and also like align my life with what I want to see. And I want to see more pleasure. I want to see more ease. I want to feel more rested and feel more authentic. Yeah, it really turned towards actually treating my body better too. Like I was so disconnected from my body. And something I have been sitting with for this last month in December, which another teacher that I really enjoy, Maryam Hasnaa, talked about was pleasure as prayer, pleasure as devotion. And really, instead of using my sensitivities to like try to fix everybody around me or try to like run myself towards crisis, kind of like just beat myself up, been actually attuning it towards like turning my energy inward, actually caring for my vessel and for my body so I actually can bring in new light codes or bring in the new energy that's supposed to be felt. Because I found too that when people were most changed by me and in my presence, when I was also being myself and also modeling different ways to be, which was like, we can actually take it slow. We can actually plan things out. There's ways to create safety for yourself. There's actually ways to like, I didn't have to run towards healing everyone if I actually focused on healing myself and actually giving myself what I needed to thrive. And actually one of my therapists asked me that. It's like, what would it look like for Tavia to have whatever you needed for 100% you? Like, what would your life look like if you actually trained yourself towards curating an experience that was focused on what do you need to feel pleasure? Because like life is going to happen. Like you're going to get problems. You're going to have obstacles. That's just kind of par for the human course. But I can control how I respond to them. I also can control, and I'm fortunate now, I can control how I can like structure my environment. I can control what foods I eat. I can control actually using my sensitivity to fine tune itself towards pleasure, towards like, wearing clothes that make me feel good. Do I like lavender? Do I like taking baths? How do I like to engage my spiritual practice? How do I engage with plants to support my well-being? Like there's just such an array, and doing that, like focusing on that, focus on giving myself what I need to actually be myself helps me to show up to the work so much better. And it makes the work so much more effective. And I'm actually able to create change and impact as opposed to before when I was like, trying to meet all these different deliverables or goals or what I thought people expected from me or what, making a change is supposed to look like, which can be a lot of suffering, a lot of like making sure you're attuned to every person suffering in the world. And if you're not paying attention to that, then you're not good, and really being caught up in this. I don't know. It was just a very toxic swirl I wasn't finding that I was making the change I wanted to make in the world. And I also was finding that my inner life was not at all what I wanted either. So I can go on and on for days, but
well, first of all, that as you're talking, the thing that really comes to mind for me is this visual image of, as I think we are often conditioned to do in society, of having a very mental, linear, mind-focused, mind-pointed focus on what we want to do in terms of how we want to create change in the world. That for those of us who are change makers, there can be this encouragement to be very mentally focused in terms of manifesting what we want to do or engaging in the world. And that when we drop into the wisdom of the body, when we actually embody what we want to experience in this life from a place of joy, play, pleasure, which, I mean, clearly the plants are showing that to us every day, all day. How do we do this? They're embodying that every second of the day. And so they can really help us understand how to do this. But this piece that you brought up around pleasure as prayer, pleasure as devotion, and particularly around connecting in with your own sensitivity to understand how to tune into what you enjoy. I'm curious if you could tell us a bit more about that. Like, how do you use your sensitivity both to tune into what you enjoy and then also in a way that actually helps you nourish your nervous system and really live the life that you love?
Oh, Lord, that is just so great. I love this question. Yeah, I didn't really start to embody that deeply until a couple years ago, like 2017, when I took my first herbalism folk medicine class that was like taught by a really dope Indigenous, Black, queer teachers, and it was amazing. But yeah, I didn't realize how much my perception also was colored by how jacked up my nervous system was and how I wasn't understanding how to just give it the base nutrients, like giving myself rest, like understanding, learning herbalism and learning the medicine of plants was such an eye opener, just like the different ways in which building habit with teas and just different ways that I could just almost even build a ritual of it at the end of the day. And it's just like, I think it's been really useful for me to connect to the power of the erotic, the power of feminine energy. Because even though I'm in a feminine form, I've got different readings that's kind of like, this is, if you're into past life regressions, understanding your soul's experience. My soul hasn't had much experience with femininity and really understanding the power of the feminine and the power of embodiment and sensuality. And I feel like there's a little battery inside of all of us that, I can kind of just recharge on my own through grounding to the earth, through actually treating my body well, through actually taking the time to figure out what it is I like and how I like to feel and understand that I have agency and power to make that happen. And so, as I mentioned before, the pleasure as prayer class that Maryam Hasnaa did was really great because she walked us through an actual questionnaire that really thought through how do you perceive, how do you think about your sensory perception, really actually thinking about how sensitive am I to my environment? What is overwhelming for me? I knew growing up, I was an introvert, or I kind of had these different labels that I have since evolved now, but I kind of always had an understanding too that, I needed quiet to recharge, or I like reading books, So I think in some of that, it was kind of paying attention to myself. That's the only really way in which I had to start figuring out how do I actually tune my life towards pleasure, sort of actually have to pay attention to what it is that I like and believe and trust myself when I have an urge that I want something or want more of something. I think it also is a mixture of learning how to listen to my body and talk to my body. That also helps me learn how to tune into when something is for me. And so I get a feeling in my gut, there are ways in which you can kind of also, if you are, meditation works for me and still meditation works for me, but that doesn't always work for everyone. Some people meditate through moving, or there are other ways in which they build focus. But for me, I really enjoy clearing my mind, or at least giving myself something to focus on to kind of understand myself. And so when I set those spaces and those time to get to know myself through journaling or stillness, I then understand how my intuition speaks to me. So that also really kind of learning that thing, really kind of starting out like one of the biggest herbs that helped me in nervous system regulation and also even pleasure and sensuality is oats and milky oat. I was always doing oat straw as like my like grounding herbal infusion. And it has so many like, oats are just a sturdy like sustenance. Like they're very, I think, a feeling food even in general. And as an herb, like all the minerals, all the different ways in which it fortifies your nervous system. Like when I started like taking that, first I had definitely like to clear myself out. But after like, I got used to like, I'm drinking a lot of water and a lot of herbs. There was just a way in which I was feeling a calm and was able to have more spaciousness, to even like think clearly. I think, really understanding pleasure as a fuel and not so much a reward really also shifted my perspective. I think as a Capricorn Cap, I was very work hard, achieve, and I couldn't really rest until I got this thing, or I was setting milestones for myself. Like I couldn't really enjoy life unless I was doing that or doing this. And like just, having these milestones that I think, again, were just around like pushing myself towards what I thought was success. And now it's been very much like I can enjoy my life whenever I enjoy my life. Like it's actually, I can make the choice to enjoy my life and that's okay. But yeah, I think it's been an energy shift of that, like really leaning into the feminine, leaning into embodying myself, leaning into, they're just ways that you take pleasure from the everyday, like, understanding, even like decoupling pleasure and sensual pleasure out of sex. Like, there are a lot of ways in which like a tea or a walk can like fill me with pleasure, or like coloring, just kind of really being open around how I receive pleasure and like the different ways in which I can also, just build in enjoying my life into my day. At the same time as I'm like working on like, how can I impact my community? How can I, connect people to earth? Like, there's still that work. I'm always going to hold that because that's my purpose and that's what I'm here to do. But also I'm here to enjoy myself as well. And I really feel like it can be hard to hold that in a time when like there is so much suffering that we see around us. But it's like, I really feel like it's a responsibility. It's a sacred responsibility to hold feeling good, because I don't know. I just feel like that's, that vibration ripples outward. And I just feel like if you have this privilege to actually like, I don't know, enjoy yourself, you should do it and also not feel guilty about it. And I feel like, it helps fortify us for more work. Cause I've tried the other side and I feel like there's a narrowing, like it kind of cuts off my vision. If I'm actually able to feel how to feel pleasure, or it's an expansive way to create. It creates much more generous solutions when I'm feeling good about myself, when I'm treating myself well, when I'm actually facing the world with a stabilized nervous system. I feel like the way in which I plan and think from that place is leagues ahead from where I was. And I was like, just thinking I had to suffer, and that was the right way to make change for me.
That's huge. And what you were talking about really resonated, that it's really a sacred responsibility. It reminds me of that Mary Oliver quote to really let the soft animal of your body love what it loves, that this is in fact a sacred responsibility, and just the value of listening to the body, of talking to the body, of listening to the somatic wisdom of the body. And so big what you shared here, understanding pleasure as fuel rather than a reward. I'm like, that is a game changer. That is a game changer, I think, specifically for people who work in service-oriented industries, where it's like, we came into this life, we know this is a life of service, we're very giving oriented. And there can oftentimes be, I think, a encouragement to deny the self-pleasure as a part of that whole schema of what it means to be a service-oriented person. And so, which also just, brings to mind for me this whole experience of honoring the vessel of the body, honoring the body as a temple. And, especially for those of us who work in the healing arts, in your experience, why is it so important to tend your vessel? Why is it so important to honor the body as a temple?
Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord, just because I remember I just started this year actually seeing people as a practitioner one-on-one. And it was eye-opening just as a healer, in order, I think, too, to like, there's a way in which I feel like I had to learn not to meet people where they were and like not to take on their energy. Because I think too, as healers, like that's not really our job. When you're healing someone, or not even healing someone, when you're holding the space for them to heal themselves, it's actually like a sacred work of like to me like reflection, and also like letting them know, like ultimately like you hold the keys, you hold the energy. I'm just kind of holding the space in the channel for you to see that. And also push my edges around how I take care of myself, because I was trying to hold people when I hadn't even really got to the place of like how to adequately hold myself. And so I feel like now I'm like, oh crap, like that's how I need to figure out how to hold myself. And after I figure out how to hold myself and hold myself in my own healing journey, I can also create proper boundaries in order to hold people in a way too, where I'm not kind of getting tripped up on some old scripts that I had around overgiving or codependence or trying to like figure things out for people. So I think just on my personal healing journey, it helped me to hold space for the ways in which I was possibly coming to healing or helping people from a place of like some wounds and trauma that I had to work through. But now that I've done that, and also just as a healer too, like there's always like almost like a sacred mirror reflection piece. So I feel like I was also seeing myself and people I was holding space for. And yeah, it was at that moment when I first started, it just was, I was able to realize like, oh crap, I was giving all this advice, but I hadn't even embodied it for myself around like how to rest, how to take, listen to your body, take your intuitions seriously. So yeah, I think for my own journey as a person holding people in healing space, it was really eye-opening for me to be like, oh, this is why I treat myself well, because I have to, I don't know, hold the space that is possible. I have to also embody what I'm teaching, or embody what I'm showing people. So if I'm not even embodying it, how can I really help teach it and hold it and really actually share, I don't know, those codes or share those habits, or even in my energy, like how can you even pick up on that if we're in space, but I'm not even doing it? So I think that was the first thing around it, talking about embodiment. And like, I, as a person and a healer, usually teach from what I know and what I've lived through, what I've actually healed up. So I think that's one reason why it's important as a healer to really attune to your body. And also because, yeah, like when I also was holding people in space, like you're really bringing in deep energy or higher energy. It's a very activating experience. So you have to actually make sure your nervous system is cool with holding on that light all the time, or just like there's a way in which like when you're in that type of space or ceremony that it can really, I feel like be tapped into your human body. And so it's really important. And also be very vulnerable space. So I think it was really important for me to also like have opening and closing rituals, ways in which I was like really holding this moment in space as a contained moment that we're having protection around, so that I don't bring in my stuff that kind of can flow the experience. And also when it's over, like we can like detach and like it be. So I feel like it helps, just have healthier energetic boundaries as well when I was holding space. And yeah, I do feel like as a healer sometimes we have to hold people like, I think the vision of their true selves. And I think that takes a lot of energy, like holding the vision of who you really are, even though in this moment you're like, I'm at my lowest. I don't believe this is to be true. I'm like, I'm holding who you really are until you can see it and realize it yourself. And then you hold it, I'm holding that energy for you. So I just think it's a lot of container holding. It's a lot of like energy, even if it feels effortless or not looks effortless, like as healers, as those like sacred reflections, as these sacred channels to like, hey, there's a different way. And we're creating new models. Like, just holding the vision is work. And I think it just helps to realize that's true and like, treat it with the weight it deserves, like treating yourself well, showing people how to treat themselves well. And also knowing that like, it looks different for every person. Like me treating myself well looks different than what you treating yourself well looks like. But I think we all need to hold that's okay. Like we can hold like treating ourselves well and like holding ourselves to a higher standard of care, because I think, how we treat others definitely is a direct reflection of how we can treat ourselves too. And so, as a healer, it really was mind blowing for me to like treat myself well, because I really need to treat myself well and love myself. And also it helps me hold so much more space for other people too, from this place of love and also ease, because I feel supported by my constellation of heavenly hosts, spirit star beings, plants, as well as my ancestors, human friends, like people like, in the waking world. And that, so I do feel like a whole constellation of support too that surrounds me. So I'm able to tap into that, which I think really also, affects how I'm able to hold people in space. And I think in a great way. Yeah.
There is so much good stuff in what you just shared. Oh my God, so much good stuff. Okay. So that piece of like what you just were talking about with the support, tapping into the multidimensional supports, which includes everything, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual supports, all the supports that they can help us to both open and close the space to have really clear, healthy, energetic boundaries with the container in any kind of healing work that we do, whether that's with ourselves, holding space for clients, anything. Could even be if you're, creating spreadsheets or something. Like, honestly, I'll call in the support team for creating my spreadsheets. I literally do this. It's amazing.
Always.
Best spreadsheets ever. Yeah, so good. But then this other piece of what you shared, which for years, I wrote this thing down. I'm sure it came to me in a divinely inspired moment, but for years had this little phrase right next to my desk. And then I had it inside just different areas that I'd be referencing over the years. And it said to heal yourself first, and then you can live how you want to live, radiant, streaming. That it's like, yeah, if we want to be living from this place of living the radiance fully embracing, fully expressing the radiant vibrance of who we truly are, that we do need to go through this process of healing the self first. It's a prerequisite. It's like absolutely required to do that first. That once we do that, and this ties in with something that you were also just talking about, that once we really do that, then we become better at really embodying the sacred mirror of reflection in the healing process, which of course nature does so beautifully. And I know that you've also recently, especially, really been working with this experience of embodying the mycelial network in your connections with people, and really working with this understanding of mycelia and tree roots as model. And so I'm curious, what can we learn from the mycelia and the tree roots about how to work together?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love them. I love the mycelia and the tree roots. So I guess for folks listening, mycelia is kind of like mushrooms. There's a bunch of mushroom documentaries on Netflix. I forget all the names of them, but this is a connection that mushrooms have called mycelia that spreads over the Earth's crust, and they are able to send nutrients to each other, information, and they also interface with tree roots, which trees are also like connected all across the crust of the Earth. And they also, again, send send nutrients, resources, and information to each other. It's like a whole little neural network. And so one of the projects that I co-steward is called the Black Mycelium Project, and it's really it's a collection of Black, queer, and trans Southerners, and we've been working on helping build our enterprises together through land enterprises, healing enterprises, and different ways in which we are wanting to connect our ancestors to our special healing medicine and our roots as Southerners, and really kind of keep that way of life, and also just fortify us to create legacy, pass it on, get land in our hands, and also for our families and our future, So all that's to say, we've been really kind of digging deep into how we just learning from the nature of that, like this idea of, I don't know, it's like sharing, but it also takes, it reminds me of also like Age of Aquarius energy, because it does really take, in order to, I feel like, have a strong collective, you have to have a strong individuated sense of yourself as well, and kind of like how you want to engage a collective, what you have to offer. You have to also like really be mindful of your boundaries. So I feel like in that collaboration, as well as my other collaboration, Durham Community Apothecary, where I work with 3 other friends, and we have a mutual aid apothecary we'll be creating that gives herbal medicine to folks in our community. And we also give materials for BIPOC medicine makers. So we also teach people how to make medicine, also create medicine, and give them for free, and also sliding scale. And we're getting into doing community circles. But the point is, it's been a really deep like journey and like healing myself and intimacy and like feeling adequate, and also within myself, and also like working together with people I deeply respect and who are my friends and my loved ones, especially in the tumultuous times of what we've lived through in 2020 and this year as well. It's just like, yeah, it was really a time where we you got real clear about who your support was, who your people were, and like real clear on like how to support each other, like through shortages, through different things, happening in the world that create instability. It's like, who is rooting you down? So I think I've been learning a lot about, I used to feel very, I have to do it myself. I'm very self-reliant. And so the idea of even like going in on property or land with people to create home was weird to me. Because I'm like, I always thought, I'd make enough money to buy my own home. And that was like a big, show of independence and I don't know, arriving as an adult. And now I've had such a big shift on like really kind of working collectively and also like what that takes to work collectively. It takes a high sense of vulnerability, but also I just feel like a sacred constellation of support and like, people who like I've grown and really tended in my relationships for the last 2 years in particular, but I've always been kind of a well-networked relationship-y kind of person. I don't know what that is attuned to, but I enjoy collaboration and really like building relationship with people. That's always been something. But I think I hadn't done it so intimately. And so now in my later years, after I've gone through my Saturn return and in this moment now, just really digging into how I really share and also like really want to build dreams with people and build new realities, which, requires a certain level of delusion or just like faith, that it can exist. And then when you find those people who actually share that faith with you, it's just like, what? We got to do something. So yeah, I think it's been like just understanding all the different ways too that nourishment happens. Like it's not just us having enough money to pay our bills and, buy food and pay for our car and stuff like that. It's like we've really also come together and like emotionally supported each other and through like different job shifts and wanting to expand families. There's just a lot of ways which we showed up for each other that I used to not think was possible outside of the family unit, but also at the same time, I'm Black queer. And there are a lot of ways in which when you have identities like queer and trans that are marginalized, you do create your own families. You have to, because if your family of origin isn't a safe space. So I just really like how we've like, it's just blown up in the last couple of years of my idea of like what relationships can hold and the intimacies they can hold, especially with people who aren't like your family, your blood family, or your romantic partner, has really just like blown wide open. And I really enjoy mimicking like mycelium and feel like there's this like underground network of people that I'm connected to all over. Like, maybe your resources like you need a helping hand or a word of like encouragement, or maybe I need to give this person $50 to like go towards this campaign, or I can like, it's just like, it's always like this, I don't know, give and take reciprocity, this flow that's happening sometimes that, or all the time, honestly. And so it also reminds me too, like not only in the relationships that I'm tending in like these different networks that are holding deep work in our homes, I'm also like every moment in which I engage with another human, if I have the capacity. So I'm not saying that I do this all the time, but I kind of do. I'm like, how can I make this like a beautiful, nourishing moment? Like, how can I give a bit of sustenance, a bit of like light, a bit of something, like if I'm interacting with something on the street or in line, like, and I just think I do kind of hold that. It's like, you never know what moment also can be supportive and help someone, It's just really thinking of like always being supported and also being able to receive support too, which is something I had to really work on. It's like, I give it a lot, but like part of giving is also being able to be vulnerable and receive and actually have people show up for you. So it's just really been sweet. And I think I'm really glad that we like modeled some of our works off the idea of mycelia and nature or entry roots. Cause it's just like, that's what I want to mimic. I don't know. Nature just gives the best mirrors and the best, like, just practical advice and energetic. It's just like, oh, that's so cool. They just like help each other and they just talk to each other and share, I don't know.
I love that nature gives the best practical and energetic advice. I'm like, yep. Really, really, really feel that. Yeah, really feel that. There's just so many gems in what you just shared. The piece around all the ways that nourishment happens, the value of connecting with chosen family, the value of having a strong sense of self and a strong neural network of community and connecting with community, having a sacred constellation of support for building new realities and really tuning into the mirror of nature to help support us in doing that. That's so powerful in what you just shared.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So good. And so tell us, how do the plant spirits really support you in your life's work?
Goodness. In so many ways. Like just the other day, I was thinking about boundaries and I was like, let me just meditate and think about there are all these like black walnut trees that were like, releasing their walnuts and stuff. So I was like sitting down with a walnut and just like thinking about like his little hole and like all the different ways in which there's like a lot of things you have to get through to get to the little walnut. So there just been times when like I will be going through something and I'll just be like, I want to meditate and think about this plant because like it's mirroring something that, I need to really think through. And so that's always fun. And sometimes too, I'll like look up like, what their essences mean, even though I know they told me. I'm like, I wonder what Google says. And it's like, oh my God, that's the exact same thing that we were just talking about in the plant world, or just like when I was in meditation. So I'm like, it's real, it exists. We can talk to plants. But yeah, so I do that sometimes where like, the plants just come to me if I need something, or something at that level now where like if I'm like really thinking through something, sometimes something will flash in my mind or a smell will come to me. I still am a big tea fan. I love teas, and I do love I'm a very seasonal person. So like I kind of work on like what's around me, like in the winter. We're in the winter now. I'm in the South. So I mean there are certain things that are like things are going into dying, or things are just kind of slowing down. So I think too, in the ways of the plants or nature, I pay attention to what's happening around me and follow suit. And I think I shared this with you another time, but yeah, I'm thinking about flowers a lot lately. So I've been really connected to flowers and people, or flowers because they radiate and they're bold and they're pretty. They don't care who looks at them, or they like, that's not why they do it. So yeah, I've been really thinking about my image. So like I spend time with plants that I think are, going to have some medicine for me, for like, whether that be through flower essence, like actually imbibing them in tea, or energetically, or sitting with them. That's still something I do. And I do like to, I'm not doing it in this moment, but every once in a while, I like to have a little plant diet where like I sit with the plant for multiple weeks through tea and just kind of understand what it's trying to talk to me about. So I might do that next year, actually, in 2022, like pick up plant each month, get to know deeper through tea or just energetic communication. But yeah, I think it's just like it's second nature. It's like, ooh, there's just like, if I have something I'm dealing with, I'm like, okay, what plant works with this? Or what plant is coming to me that might, be able to give me some medicine around how to navigate this. I also look to what's around us. So, back when it was kind of when fall was hitting a lot of our gardens, some of our like the little temperate things are coming back. Like what came back? No, we harvested yarrow and mint. That didn't come back. Anyway, that's random. But all that's to say, it's been nice to also have a garden and kind of see what kind of grows up around, and what kind of perks up. Like some plants I didn't expect to perk up, but perk up. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like when plants kind of just show up on your doorstep or places that you frequent. So that's really sweet. I think I like how they speak to me when you like pay attention and know how to talk to them. So yeah, I don't know, but they're just really constant companions, and there's so many ways to engage with them. And also, I've been teaching a bit more low key, but like we've done a few circles for the Durham Community Apothecary in November that were really sweet with some youth. And so it's also nice to teach because like then students ask you different questions, or people like they ask you questions that help you see the plants differently. And so kind of like explaining or teaching and talking is another way of kind of getting to know them even deeper, especially as you see them through other people's eyes who are just getting to see the plants in that way and are surprised that you can actually even engage with plants in that way. That's always a really sweet space to be too. So I'm excited too for next year to bring some more teaching so I can like, it deepens our relationship with plant kin, but also allows me to be like, you can talk to plants too, which I think is something that I want people to just know. Like there's a whole web of support around here for you that you can engage with, and they're reaching out and they want to talk to you too. So yeah.
I love that. And I love that you've been working and connecting more with flower medicine. It's absolutely amazing. One of the things though, that you were just talking about too really reminded me of how, especially in wintertime, it's so interesting. And so I'm over here in Oregon, and it's so interesting to notice, particularly when things bloom out of quote unquote out of season. I'm like, okay, you are definitely here for a reason. Like at the very edge of our driveway, we have some yarrows blooming in December. And to me, yarrow is I'm like, yarrow is a summer solstice plant in our, local environment here. And so for yarrow to be coming up in the middle of December, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. So amazing. So
such a sweetheart.
I know. So amazing. So amazing. And so tell us, clearly you are so involved in so many incredible projects right now. How can people find you and find out more about your work?
Sure. My Instagram is at Black and Herby. So that's BLACKNHERBY. And then for the Durham Community Apothecary, we have an Instagram that is at Durham Community Apothecary. And then we have a website that's durhamcommunityapothecary.wordpress.com. So you can go there to find more about that. And Black Mycelium has a Patreon. I feel like if you do Google Black Mycelium Project, you could find it, but I'll send you the link for the Black Mycelium Patreon. But yeah, that's where some of my work lives now. And there's going to be more. I think 2022 is going to bring a lot more publishing and scaling up and public facing ways to engage with all the stuff I've been, brewing in the underground mycelia. So more to come.
Love that. Well, Tavia, thank you so much for joining us today. Just such a deep honor, delight, joy. It's such a joy to see you always. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's such a joy to be in conversation with you about the plants and about energy. It's really a beautiful, sacred container you curate. So thank you for always inviting me and appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you. And thanks so much for listening and joining us today on the Plant Spirit Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and please follow to subscribe, leave a review, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.